Good morning, this is Eric Kampmann. This is Sunrise, and I'm with Chuck Davis, author of The Bold Christian. And we've been talking about, yesterday we talked about a engaged God, an intimate God. And I want to actually just make kind of a personal statement of where I was in terms of that idea, or that reality. And I couldn't have been further away from it. God was literally an idea that I could easily reject because I did not see any relationship between me and God. The problem with that view in my own life, and I'm sure this is true of other people, is that I slowly started drifting off the rails of what generally would be called a sane life or a productive life. I started making decisions that were ultimately harmful to my well-being and to the well-being of people I knew and worked with. I think it stemmed from the fact that the God I thought I knew was an institutional God. He was somebody that was represented by certain types of hymns, certain types of stained glass, certain types of buildings. But there was no intimacy, at least conscious intimacy. I think ultimately there was an intimate God that was actually trying to direct me in the right direction, but I was what I would call a hard case.
Yeah. Well, oftentimes with most of us as human beings, when things are going well, our sense of need for a God who would give us direction and redefine our identity can wander a bit. It's those moments when we're in crisis. So for you, it was an actual financial bankruptcy. One of the things I often pray for the community in which I serve is that we would all recognize our spiritual bankruptcy, that we're in serious trouble before we have to become financially bankrupt. Sadly, when I look at the history of revival and movements of God, people who are doing well generally don't find themselves driven to God. Maybe that's why Jesus said it's harder for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God than it is for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. But it's in those moments of desperation that we have this exposure to our heart that we're bankrupt there. That each one of us would be quite vile and selfishly oriented people if not for the grace of God that calls us along. And so there comes that moment for some of us where God pulls the blinders up off of our heart, and all of a sudden we see our need for Him. And back to that gospel message, what He does for us we could never do for ourselves. He rescues us, gives us our identity back, and puts us fully into our purpose as members of the Restoration Project.
What you described is exactly what happened in my own life. What you're saying really resonates with me. And I'm eternally grateful for the eyes of my heart to open up to the bankruptcy that was my life. God was pursuing me, and now I'm pursuing Him, so it's a pretty good deal at the end of the day. This is Eric Kampmann with Chuck Davis, and we've been talking about Chuck's book, The Bold Christian.